I spent about 2 years learning Norwegian, and then I finally visited Norway. But when I got home from Norway, I quit learning Norwegian. And this trip is the reason I learn differently now. Before taking this trip, I had essentially built this trip up in my mind. I had been learning Norwegian for 2 years. I was taking numerous online lessons and spending a lot of money on learning resources and textbooks. I also had this deep-rooted connection to the Norwegian language, and I thought that this trip would answer why I had this deep connection for a country I had never been to, and why I love a language I essentially don't need as an English speaker. So this trip was very symbolic for me. And right before I left, I had one last Norwegian lesson on italki with a new Norwegian teacher who basically told me he believed I was only at an A1 level in Norwegian. And this news crushed me because initially I thought I would be able to go to Norway and have conversations in Norwegian, not overly complex conversations, but enough, you know? So hearing that I was only A1, I took a step back and I thought to myself, okay, I might not be able to have these big conversations, but I'll still be able to have, the basics, be able to order food, ask for directions, maybe just small talk. Pretty much, anything. I distinctly remember being in the airport about to board my flight to Norway and seeing the flight crew of flight attendants come to board the plane and overhearing them speak Norwegian to one another. And it felt surreal. It was that moment that made me realize I'm actually going to Norway. And when we landed, it was like a switch had been flipped. All of the announcements, signs, conversation around us was in Norwegian. Like, yeah, you had your English signs and, a lot of things were translated, but the majority was Norwegian, and all of the conversations around me and my brother who went with me were in Norwegian. And for the first time, I wasn't studying Norwegian. I was inside of it. The first full day we were in Norway, I tried ordering breakfast in Norwegian. I remember ordering the food perfectly fine, but when it came to the drinks, I messed up. I was trying to order 1 apple juice and 1 orange juice, and I kept saying the wrong word for apple juice. And every time I said the word, I just remember seeing the cashier's face just being confused, like he wasn't sure what I was trying to say. And I naturally just switched back to English. And that moment stuck with me. Not because I forgot a word, but because the second speaking Norwegian became hard, I switched back to English. After that moment, I hesitated going forward. I would think of what to say in Norwegian in situations, but ultimately decide just to speak English. Somewhere in my mind, I thought it was easier for me, for everyone involved, if I just spoke English. My older brother and I went on a fjord cruise where we were sat with 2 older Norwegian gentlemen who were being friendly, who were asking us questions about where we are from, what we were doing in Oslo, and what made us interested in Norway. And I remember telling them that I was learning Norwegian. They assumed I didn't know a lot. I let them assume I hardly knew anything. I remember them teaching me the word for shrimp, which I already knew. I also vividly remembered them talking to each other at points and not realizing that I understood parts of their conversation. At one point of the cruise, there was an open shrimp bar, and the cruise people asked us not to give shrimp to the seagulls that had been following the boat. And one of the older Norwegian guys threw shrimp to the seagulls. And one of the crew people of the fjord cruise came up to the guy, and this interaction happened in Norwegian. They were like, hey, don't give shrimp to the seagulls. The older guy was just like, it's okay. I just wanted to show the Americans. And I sat there and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to mess up. I didn't want to forget a word or stumble over myself. Looking back, I realized something, that every experience came with this internalized pressure that I should be proving myself in Norwegian, proving that my 2 years of studying amounted to something, proving that I wasn't just a beginner, proving that I deserved to be there. But by doing this, I wasn't allowing this trip to be a trip. I was turning every single interaction into a mini Norwegian speaking exam. And every time I stayed silent or I chose to speak English, it was like I was failing. And the thing that snapped me out of it wasn't even language focused. It was actually a kayaking tour. Now, I am terrible at kayaking, so I physically had to focus on not tipping over and not crashing into other people. Essentially, I was trying not to embarrass myself. And for the first time on this trip, I wasn't measuring myself up to Norwegian. I was just there. And that's when it hit me that I had built this trip into something it wasn't supposed to be. This trip wasn't to confirm my Norwegian level, to validate who I was. It was meant to just be a trip. When I got home, I felt ashamed. I had spent 2 years and hundreds, if not thousands of dollars trying to learn Norwegian. So when I couldn't confidently order apple juice, I felt like a failure. And to be clear, I don't think anybody in my life, not my family, not my boyfriend, no one thought this of me, but I felt like a failure. I felt like I had wasted my time, energy, and money on something I couldn't achieve. And I stopped studying Norwegian altogether. Not because I stopped loving Norwegian or that the Norwegian language didn't bring me joy, but because I was hurt. And for a year and a half, I didn't study Norwegian once. I didn't open a textbook, I didn't take a lesson, and I didn't even watch Norwegian TV. What's strange is that I had completely severed myself from the Norwegian language for a year and a half. I hadn't heard or seen the language at all. Yet that spark or that connection I felt to Norwegian was still alive. And I don't know exactly what caused it, but one day Norwegian popped back into my mind. And I came back with this realization that language learning looks different for everyone, and that we all aren't these inspiring polyglots. Some of us take time and a lot of energy to learn a language. So I chose to focus on what's manageable for me in my life. And I also chose to focus on what brings me joy, like watching entertaining YouTube videos, listening to Norwegian music, and just absorbing the language as a whole. I'm trying not to pressure myself into being perfect because I'm not perfect. I'm still learning, and that's okay. I thought my trip to Norway would explain why I have such a deep rooted connection to Norwegian and show me what that meant for my identity. But it showed me that I needed to let go of this idea of being perfect. That who I am is not measured by how well I speak Norwegian or how well I learn a language, and that we don't have to measure ourselves to these unrealistic expectations. I needed to learn that it's okay to be imperfect and it's okay to be a learner.